Okay, we are live. Hi guys, it is Facebook Live Thursday, and I am Rona from Rona the Ribbitor. I can talk today. Oh my goodness, I haven't had enough coffee. Yes, so I am Rona, like I said, from Rona the Ribbitor. So if we haven't met yet, it's nice to meet you. I run the travel blog for quilters that actually is the only travel blog that provides everyday quilters with tips and tools to confidently pursue their dreams and sense of adventure. We actually have a lot of fun over on that blog, and I have a newsletter too that you can sign up for. What are we talking about today? So today, you know what, I had like this whole thing set up that I was going to talk about today, about turning photos into quilts, because that was in my newsletter this week, was the topic. I'm working on a new workshop actually to turn photographs into quilts. I have like 3 different ways that I'm doing that. But you know what, then last night we had our guild meeting, our Charlotte Quilters Guild meeting, and our speaker this week was Michelle Stewart and her mom Peggy, and they actually were doing a quilt turn of all of Peggy's quilts, or at least a collection of them. And throughout the whole thing, she was talking about where the quilts came from, what inspired them, what kind of techniques and fabrics are in them, that sort of thing. And you know, it really like struck, I don't even know what the right word is. It stuck with me, because I started thinking about all the quilts that I make, and who I make them for, why I make them, what inspired them, what challenge did I overcome, like what new technique did I learn, because we tend to put, you know, our tags and things on the back of the quilt, right? We put our, which usually has maybe the name of the person the quilt was made for, our name, the date that we made it, and sometimes that's it, you know? So think about all the quilts that you come across that are in like antique stores and stuff like that, that we don't know where they come from. We don't know their story. We don't know their history. Or even quilts that get passed down. Like I have a couple of quilts that I know someone in my family made, but I don't know who. And I don't know the stories behind them, you know? So it really got me thinking about when she asked at the end of her, of their presentation, what's your quilting legacy? And, you know, I had to stop and think about that. I'm like, you know what? I don't know. Because a lot of people were talking about their family legacy, you know, like they learned to quilt from their parents or their grandparents, or things like that. And I'm actually the only one. I mean, my foster mom, that's a long story there. She quilts, but my sister does not. She sews, but she doesn't really quilt. And my grandmother, my biological family, my grandmother that passed away a few months ago, she was the quilter. She and her sisters quilted. They have their whole family quilted. They grew up very poor on the farm in East Texas. There was, you know, everything had to be done by hand. So they, of course, learned how to sew and to quilt and all of that. And they would get together, and they had one of those big old looms, you know, the big wooden looms where they would all quilt together and swap recipes and all that gossip stuff that, you know, quilters do when we get together. But that was it. And my cousins don't quilt. I guess I did learn recently that one of my cousins, his wife, did learn to quilt. My mom taught her how to quilt, which is awesome. But other than that, I'm it. So I think part of my quilting legacy is continuing her family's legacy of just passing on that tradition, you know, that the fabric arts in general, not just quilting, but of cross stitch and embroidery, all different forms of needlepoint and all of that, working with wool. So I think that's part of my quilting legacy, but a bigger part, I think, that kind of trumps everything, the reason I do what I do, why I started this business, how it all came about, and what I think I want, or I hope my quilting legacy will be one day when I'm no longer traversing the earth on my quilting adventures. So it started actually, quilting basically saved my life. And I may start to cry. And if I do, I'm sorry. So in my earlier adult life, I'm 43 now. But as I became an adult and it got the depression and the anxiety and panic attacks and all of that got worse and worse and worse to the point where I was literally forfeiting things that I knew I really wanted to do in my heart, but I was so afraid to do. I was afraid of being judged. I was afraid, I was the perfectionist and the people pleaser. I still am. If I didn't do it absolutely perfect, people were going to hate me and I couldn't take that kind of rejection and it just would explode. So rather than face that possibility, I would just hide. I would hibernate and I would hide from the world, and that's no way to live, you know? And so I knew that's not how I was supposed to be living, but I didn't know how to get out of that. And about 10 years ago, my sister taught me how to sew. Like I said, she's not a quilter, but she does sew. She makes clothes. She's been making clothes since we were small. And she said, you need to learn how to sew. You need a hobby. So she gave me her old machine, which was an old brother machine. I was the third person to own it. And she taught me how to stitch a straight line. And then because I have a math brain and I wanted kind of a challenge for a first project, we decided that, of course, my first project should be a quilt, right? I mean, who doesn't? So completely self-taught. We went to the fabric store, picked out a bunch of fabrics, and we decided to make very plain 6-inch blocks, put them together, and that was it. And if you look at the quilt today, it was a gift from my mother. She still has it. She won't let me fix it. It's horrible. Oh my gosh, is it horrible? None of the seams match. I mean, like, you can tell where we were putting the strips together of the 6-inch blocks, because as you go down the quilt, the seams, like the cross seams, get further and further apart. It's really bad. And then the binding, we won't even talk about the binding. It's so horrible. But you know what? I was hooked, and I'm like, this I can do, right? That my math brain, my artistic side, I can do this. So we moved out here to North Carolina, and my husband joined a motorcycle club. And that really forced me, like, to go with him to these events and stuff. It really forced me, like, okay, you're getting out of your bubble now. But how I ended up connecting with some of the people in the club was I was a quilter. I started quilting. So I said, hey, you've got all these t-shirts and stuff. I can make quilts. And so I started making t-shirt quilts for some of the guys. I started making raffle quilts where we were raising money for charities. I started making custom quilts for a few different people, but I was still very much in my bubble, right? And I was still very much afraid to get out there. Like, there was one particular instance where I was so afraid. I was supposed to be getting a patch. So if you're familiar with the motorcycle club world, that's kind of a big deal. When you earn a patch. And I was so afraid to get up and receive this patch because I'd have to be standing in front of all these people that I ended up having a panic attack and hiding in my car. That was kind of rock bottom, I think, for me, was that getting to that stage of fear, right? So then a little while later, our local Joann fabric store was hiring. And I said, you know what, I need to earn some extra money so I can keep quilting. So I decided to apply, and I got a part-time job. And I tell you what, that was my first real introduction to the quilting community at large, like the quilting community as a whole. And I realized that this community is amazing because this community is full of people just like me. The quilting community is full of people of all different shapes, sizes, just everything. We are a collection of beauty and creativity and amazingness all together. And when you go into the quilting community, whether it's at a quilt store, a local quilt shop, if you're going to a quilt retreat, if you're going to a quilt show, even if you're really nervous about it, like I tend to get, if you are afraid of, you know, you're going to end up being that one person hiding in the corner like I used to be, or the person that's at the quilt workshop that you really want to take, but you end up sitting in the corner by yourself, hoping nobody notices you, like I was. I promise you, going into that room, everyone around you is a quilter. Everyone around you is gonna be able to talk about all the things that you are passionate about, right? Like, we're all weird. I very much proudly wear the name weird, strange, odd. I revel in that now. I didn't used to, but I do now. But if you think about it, when you go into these events, these quilting events, it's like you can sit and talk about how much you get frustrated when you run out of bobbin and your machine doesn't tell you, or your 1/4 inch seams are just barely off that you have to actually take out jack and rip it out and start over. Or you can celebrate like, oh my gosh, I got that pinwheel point absolutely perfect, you know, and you could talk about things like that you get excited about, that the rest of the world kind of looks at you funny like you're a little crazy, right? So quilting literally took me from that person that I used to be, of hiding from the world and being stuck in my own brain, missing out on the adventures that are all around us. And the quilting world and the quilting community and the art of quilting brought me to where I am now, which is talking to you guys on a live video on Facebook that will be uploaded to YouTube. I now put out a weekly newsletter. I tell people all about all the things going on in our world, probably things I shouldn't sometimes. I give lectures to quilt guilds, perfect strangers. I give workshops to people that I've never met before, but are my new best friends by the time the workshop is over. And I never would have done those things if it wasn't for quilting. I would not be able to function the way I do today because of quilting, or without quilting. So I really hope that through my blog, because that's really the reason I started the blog, is to help people that were just like me, and to show you guys that if you are stuck in that kind of world with dealing with all kinds of depression and anxiety and just afraid to get out there, even to a local guild meeting, you can do it. I promise you, if I can do it, you can do it. And once you do that first one, that first little step, face that first little fear, even if it literally is just going on to a live quilt guild meeting via Zoom with your camera turned off and your microphone turned off, but you're there. That is progress. That is step number one. So it doesn't matter how small that first step is, you just got to make that first step. And then you did it. And the feeling that you get on the other side is amazing. Like, I remember the first time I did a live lecture for a guild, I screwed up. Like, I lost my place in my notes. I was fiddling with things. I kept saying all the time, which I think I still do. I'm working on that. But it actually was okay. And I made a connection with the quilters that were there. And I still get today, occasionally I'll find people online that contact me that were there at that guild and tell me that they really enjoyed the talk. So things really are worse in your brain than they are in reality. But it's just a matter of getting to that one first step and then building on that. And in 10 years time, 5 years time, even 6 months time, who knows where you'll be, you know? And I personally think that the quilting world is the best place to do that, because yeah, there's a few bad apples, but there are in every group. But by and large, quilters are so very welcoming and open arms and just amazing people that you'd be amazed how many are just like you know, and just like me. And I really hope that my blog and my newsletter and these videos can help inspire people to just really get out there and be able to do the things and go to the places and the experiences that they know in their heart they really want to do. And I think that really is the quilting legacy that I hope to leave on this planet, on this earth. I mean, who knows? I may not. Who knows what'll happen? Only God knows the future, right? Just one step at a time, and just keep following in the footsteps where I feel like I need to be. So that leaves me to the question for you guys. What is your quilting legacy? If you had to think about that, What do you want to leave the world through your quilting? Is it a message or not a tradition, but something to pass on to your family, your kids? If so, have you thought about maybe doing either a video? You could record yourself, you can write a little journal with some pictures about each quilt, like actually putting down what the quilt is, what kind of fabrics you used, what inspired the quilt, what kind of techniques you learned in making the quilt, how long it took you to make the quilt, who it was gifted for, or if it was a gift or if it was for you, why did you make it for you, that sort of thing. Because it's funny when you look at quilts, the one quilt in my house that gets used the absolute most is the last minute quilt that I made because I needed something really quickly that was used. It wasn't solids, but it's basically grunge fabric, which kind of reads as a solid, so I think it counts. But it's a little throw quilt that was literally just last minute put together, nothing fancy about it at all, plain 6-inch blocks, that's it. And it literally is the quilt that everybody uses when they come over. My daughter-in-law, she comes over on Sundays for dinner, she plops in that chair and puts the quilt over her lap. You know, so, but then you have all these other quilts, like ones that take you months and months and months to finish because you're doing all these intricate turned edge applique and all these, you know, cool things that you're learning, the techniques and stuff. And those quilts may not get used at all. Or it may be a specific quilt for, you know, a specific event or something like that. So those kind of stories really fascinate me. And those are the perfect kind of stories to write down in maybe a legacy journal or something like that, so that the history of these quilts actually get remembered down the line. So when you have a grandchild or a great-grandchild that inherits this quilt, they'll actually know all about it, and they'll know you and have a connection to you through that quilt legacy. Yeah, so that's kind of what I've been thinking about, the quilting legacy part. So anyway, I want to know what your quilting legacy is. So you can put it in the comments. I can't see the comments right now because of the way I'm filming this, but I will be checking them after the video is over. Also, if you want to get notified, I'm not sure if 11 o'clock Eastern is a great time to go live on Facebook. So if you would actually prefer, if you're watching this at a later time and there's a better time that works for you, I'm kind of playing around with different times to go live so I can get a bigger audience. But let me know what's a good time. Also, if you want to get notified when I go live, in the Facebook group, the Traveling Quilters group, there should be a little 3 little dots up on the top corner of the Facebook page. And you can click on that, and I believe it's, what is, I wrote it down. So the 3 dots, and then it'll say notifications, and you can turn on notifications for when I go live. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to hit the subscribe and notification bell so that you'll get notified when I upload these to the YouTube channel. I'm also thinking about adding them in my newsletter as well. So plenty of places for you to catch my little live videos. Next week, we will be talking about packing, because next week I am going to be packing my car. Like physically, you're going to be packing it with me. You're going to get to see everything that I take with me on my shop hop road trips, because a week from tomorrow I actually get to leave to go to the first in-person live quilt show in Atlanta, which I'm very excited about. That's the Sewing and Quilt Expo. So you can definitely check that out on their website. I think I'll try to put a link, but if not, it's just do a quick search for Quilt Show Atlanta, and it'll pop up. And then from there, I will be driving down through Alabama and into New Orleans. I'm going to be stopping at a bunch of quilt shops along the way. I will be live from New Orleans in 2 weeks on Facebook, and then I'll be driving home back through Atlanta and Georgia up the southern side. So we're going to have a nice long road trip. It should be lots of fun, and get to meet lots of quilters and experience a bunch of quilt shops. I love going to different quilt shops all over the country because they all have different specialties and different fabrics, and my wallet doesn't like it. My bank account tends to cringe every time I get in the car, but that's okay. We just tell him to be quiet. So yeah, so that's going to be next week. Like I said, we're going to be packing the car for the big road trip, and then live from New Orleans in 2 weeks, And after that, I have no idea, because I really, my brain can't think that far yet. So, like I said, be sure to leave comments below. Tell me what your quilting legacy is. Turn on that notification to let me know, or to be notified when I go live. And if you're on YouTube, hit that notification button. And also, be sure to check out the website and sign up for my newsletter. I'll put a link below. So until next Thursday, see you later, guys. Happy quilting.